welcome back. It's been a while. Swarm season got just out of control there for a while. I just didn't have any time to bring the camera into the yards. Swarm season started really early, and it seems like almost every one of my hives went into a swarm mode. It got so bad at one point that I even stopped pulling queens and making nukes out of them. If you remember one of my last videos about how I manage an active swarm mode in a hive, just to recap, I pull the queen out, put her in a nuke, kill all the queen cells in that host hive, and we go through the whole re-queening process. So it was to the point where I wasn't even doing that. I think there was about 3 or 4 hives where I didn't have any equipment, and I didn't really want any more hives. It's just, I have to kind of, take it back a couple notches. It's just been getting too busy for me. So I actually just had to cull some queens. It's unfortunate. I wish I could have just given them away to somebody, but there was just no time. It was just crazy. So sorry that it's been so long since I put a video out. So I did pull some honey yesterday, about 120 pounds worth. I've been pulling honey since beginning of June. That was early this season. So I pulled so far about 600 pounds plus the 120 I pulled yesterday. It's about 4 full supers. Each super is about 30 pounds. So I figured let me extract as I go. I like to pull as I go. I don't wait until just one day and just do all my harvesting, because I want to return those supers back to the hives. I have 40 hives, and if you need 2 supers per hive, that's 80 supers with 800 frames, and I just don't have that kind of budget or space. So I extract as I go, and I just throw the wet supers back on whatever yard I'm going to that I'm going to be pulling frames from. I don't wait until the box gets full. If there's 3 or 4 frames in a box that's capped and ready to go, I'll pull those frames out, take them home with me. I'll replace them with drawn frames that were previously extracted. Hopefully, if I don't have any of those, I'll put some undrawn frames in, and maybe they can build those up for me next year, so that when I increase my super inventory, I'll have some at least partially drawn frames to get them going for next year. So some of the tools that we're going to go over, obviously you need an extractor, which is this guy right here. You're going to notice that, for somebody who has 40 hives, and I'm doing about 1,100 pounds. Last year I did 1,100 pounds, and every year I have about a 20 to 25% increase in honey. This is a 3-frame tangible extractor, which means you have to take the frames out and rotate them and then do the other side. So you put the 3 frames in, you crank the handle, it all whips out, then you got to stop, take all the frames out, spin them again, and then that batch is done of 3 frames. I should probably have a much bigger extractor at this point. I'm a little cheap, but I think I'm going to treat myself to at least an 8-frame crank. I find that the motorized extractors, in my opinion, I don't know, turning the handle is not the hard part. It's just the limited amount of frames and having to flip the frames over in the extractor that becomes like the bottleneck in my operation. I think the advantage to a motor would be, a motorized one, is that you could set it on low with your frames kind of going, and you can go and uncap more frames while this is kind of just slowly whipping the honey out of the frames. So I guess you could multitask a little bit. But I think I'm going to go with a hand crank 8-frame radial extractor. That's the kind that it'll spin out both sides of the frame at the same time. So that's your extractor. I use these bucket strainers. They make them in 200, 400, and 600 micron. I kind of go right in the middle. Theory being that the too fine of a mesh might kind of just ultra filter your honey, where we don't really want to do that. We kind of want to strain it. So I figured, and then the widest screen, the most coarse screen, I feel might let a little too much of the natural goodness through, and it'll crystallize faster. I've read that, and I haven't actually put it to the test. I just kind of started doing the middle grounds, 400 micron filters, and everything works out fine. It's so these are what I use. I have about 3 of them, 3 or 4. You don't want just one, because they will get dumped up on you, and then you got to start another bucket while this one drains out. especially if it's cooler out, this will actually empty slower than what you're filling it from the extractor. So yeah, that's how I strain my honey. And to make things a little easier, I bought these guys. So what this does is, like, if you put this in your bucket, like I have this one set up here, you know, the strainer, you know, is down here. So that bucket's going to fill up and prevent your strainer from straining all the way. So I went ahead and I bought one of these things, and it just sits on top of the bucket. And it gets the strainer up off the bucket. So those are really handy. The other tools you're going to need are, there's so many other tools out there. Again, I still am old school. I use a simple uncapping fork, or a capping scratcher, as they refer to it sometimes. So that's how I uncap my frames. You're going to see how I use this. I should probably upgrade to maybe a hot knife. I don't know. I don't like the idea of the hot knife. I've been intimidated using it because I just feel like if the frames aren't completely drawn out, you're not going to, you know, get that part of the frame. So I should probably try it out before I knock it, because I know a lot of people do use them and with great success. So I'll probably pick one up at some point, because I have to start figuring out ways to do this more efficiently, because it's become, you know, more than just a hobby. I would call it a hobby business at this point. This here is it's just a cheaper version of an uncapping tank. And the way this works is, let me try to get the camera over there. Perfect. You know, and you're going to see me do all of this in a little bit. This mounts right here. This is your frame rest. You would put your frame on here. I drove a screw, just a detonate screw through here, so I could actually stick the frame on there. It kind of holds it into place. I don't know if you're supposed to do that, but I just found that the frame kept sliding off and would fall back in. So there's it looks like a queen excluder in here, and it's just basically to keep the wax. It creates a reservoir for the honey to go in, and you know, when you're done extracting, all that honey will go in here and you actually get more. That's what I was just doing now. When I started the video, I started emptying that honey out. So that's how that works. And I think that's it for the equipment. You don't have to buy one of these right off the bat, especially if you're at like a hobby level of 1 or 2 hives. I started out, this is only 2 years old. I started out just using a Tupperware bin with just a piece of 2x4 across it. So this is about, I think, $200. So this was just something I treated myself to. You know, every time the bees put a little bit of surplus money in the account, I kind of treat myself and the bees to more equipment, and I upgrade. I've just been really cheap with the extractor. I started out with a 2-frame plastic extractor from Man Lake. I graduated up to a 3-frame. I should have probably skipped that and just went to a 6-frame right from the start. But you know what? You don't have to abuse yourself like I abuse myself. So it's time to treat myself to some better stuff. But again, you don't have to start out with all of this stuff either. Just don't beat yourself up and treat yourself to upgrades, you know, sooner than I did, because I was almost, you know, abusing myself a little bit. So that's it. Let me reset the camera up and we will show you how to extract all the frames. Okay, so I put my frame in there, hit that like that. If you're going to choose to use this method of uncapping, just try to see how my hand is up on the frame like that, because this capping fork is going to slip and it's going to stab you, and it will just literally put a hole in. Listen, it won't be a trip to the ER, but it sucks. So try to keep your hand behind here. And then when I cap, I just kind of skim it off the top like that. Now, I used to obsess over trying to just get the tops, and I was you know, really super careful. It took me forever. But then I realized it doesn't matter because any excess honey is just going to go into this capping device anyway, and you can strain it out. So, I mean, you still try to get pretty, and I got pretty decent at it. Some cappings are easier than others. These are these really light colored cappings on the real light honey. They just seem to break off so nice. Some honey frames that I randomly get are like really gummy, and they're just a pain in the neck to uncap, but these just come off like really nice. There you go. There's no rush, there's no race. You know, you're going to be slow at it at first, and like anything else, you just get better as you go. You know, even if it's a disaster at first, it's just kind of how we learn. You come up with your own techniques, and, you know, don't do everything I do. Feel free to kind of check out your own little techniques and, you know, to get proficient at it in your own way. I'm just leaving that set up there. I'm going to load this into the, I'm going to extract 2 more frames, and then I'll move the camera over to the extractor and load the last frame so you can see how we load the frames. Okay, so I'm a little bit of a dope. When I recorded the portion of the video where I actually loaded the frames into the extractor and extracted, apparently I forgot to press record because I just loaded it up and it's missing. So we're just going to pretend, so use your imagination. So you're just going to load your frames in. Try to keep the top bar of the frame going in the same direction because you want this thing to be pretty balanced. I mean, sometimes you don't, but it's all right. It's not a big deal. I try to keep them going in the same direction. So all of these bars are facing that way. So you load your frames in, you spin, and I do go this slow when I start out, because you want to get those frames, you know, if you get all nice full frames and they're pretty equal, it goes pretty well. But you get sometimes a frame that's got a little less honey in it, and others that have more, and it'll wobble on you. So you just start out real slow, and this, believe it or not, even at this ridiculously slow speed, it's throwing the honey. It'll throw the honey right out. So you do that. I usually go up to about that fast. It's really all you need. Now, this extractor, again, it's a real budget extractor. A better one would have a brake. Like this thing, like you have to slow it down like that. I think the really nice ones, they actually have like a coast, like a bike, and it'll coast, and if you pull the handle back, it's like a brake and it'll stop it. So you do your one side, and this is why the tangential, I pronounced it wrong in the earlier videos, tangential, I think. You have to spin the frames. It's just a pain in the butt. And then you would just spin it again. And once you get halfway through these, they're going to be nice and balanced at that point. Just spin, spin, spin. So one of these frames has very little wax on it. There's a little partially drawn frame. And that's why it's wobbling. Slow her down. And then just pick up your frames. You'll feel them. They'll feel like little feathers compared to what they were when they went in. You'll get the feel for it. You'll know what an empty frame feels like. If they're a little heavy still, then you just go ahead and spin them around and do it all over again. So, sorry you didn't get to actually see the actual honey, and but again, I just forgot to hit record, and I never claimed to be a great videographer or editor, so it's just here for the information. Okay, so the next step is emptying the extractor. Now, if you notice, there's a honey gate on here, but what I found is you kind of have to pitch this forward because it comes out so slow. So I put like a little shim. I usually put like a nuke cover and I use that to kind of hike up the extractor so it tips forward and the honey flows out faster. And you have to empty this extractor because the honey is going to start filling up. And then when you put your next batch of frames in, the shoulders of the frames, or the top part of the top bar that sticks down, is going to start touching the honey. And it's not only going to slow you down, I imagine it would put a lot of unnecessary wear and tear on the gear mechanism in here. So I just have a system where I do 3 frames and then I come and do this. My system is a little messed up. I can probably improve this a little better. So I got to pull it forward. I'll probably build my little extractor stand a little higher, I suppose. So there. So now it's going to kind of accelerate that a little bit. That honey is going to pour out. It's going to make room for my next 3 frames, and that's when which exactly what I do next. I start uncapping the next frame, and then when I'm done, I'm going to grab one of these already extracted frames. I leave it pitched, and I start loading the frames in while it's pitched. And then I get the next 3 frames ready to go. I kick my little shim out, and I'm ready to go. You can't spin it like this for obvious reasons. It's pitched and it's going to wobble all over the place on you. And that is pretty much it for extracting honey. Thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you guys next time.